Tim, aka Air Foiler. Just want to get a little bit more history and background of where you actually come from, Tim. How did you end up in Brandfield after all these years? And your progression towards wing falling and downwinding.
Yeah, thanks Pete. I was born in Cambridge in England, believe it or not, so 100 kilometres from the ocean, and started windsurfing when I was 12 with my brothers.
Wow.
And on a tiny gravel pit of a lake, you know, it was only 100 acres, which was real good for doing your transitions and just going backwards and forwards, and I just loved it from day one. You know.
Any sailing background, or you just went straight into windsurfing?
No, we sort of had a little bit of, you know, like dinghy sailing at school, which I was always remember being fascinated by the water coming off the bow as you were moving along. It was just magic. But yeah, the windsurfing just really kind of, it must have had a little bit. It was sort of in the mid '80s, so it just had that little bit of, I guess it had that little bit of cool factor. You know, it was just starting to get big in Hawaii, and that it felt like we were sort of part of it, even though we were just absolute kooks at it. But we just, every time we went out, it was just
so that was
so
on
fun.
original windsurfer, or
that was on, we were on Tiga gear back then, Tiga Neil Pride gear. So, but there was the old plastic boards, you know, all that stuff. But it didn't really matter. It just sort of, we were always just pacing, waiting for a windy day, you know, because we lived inland, it had to be howling to get any sort of wind. But that sort of graduated, once we started going on family holidays to the coast, that sort of graduated into waves. And I kept windsurfing for a long time, but I ended up, as I started travelling more, I sort of got sick of carrying all the gear. You know, and you'd be in a remote spot and you'd bust your mast. It ended up being a bit of a pain. And when I got onto surfboards, I just enjoyed it was so much less complicated.
Freedom of travel
and being on a wave. So much, so much freer to not have all this gear. So I sort of went down that track for a little while, or for a long while actually. But always sort of had windsurfing in the background. Whenever I was somewhere where I'd stay for a long time, I'd pick up some windsurfing gear and, God, this is so good. I just get back into it. It's like, this is so good. And then it would sort of wane again, and eventually I found my way to Australia. And
what year was that?
96, I think it was.
Did you move straight out here, or you just come out as a traveller?
I was on a trip to Indonesia on a one-way ticket. I didn't have enough money to get back to England, so it was so I can get a flight to Melbourne. And my girlfriend at the time was from Melbourne. Well, was from the surf coast actually, from Anglesey. And so I ended up going down there, and I stayed there for about 5 years, surfing the right point breaks and stuff. That in my mind, Australia was all turquoise waters, and you know, it was all beautiful. And I rocked up in Melbourne in August. It's like, why does it never wake up cold?
You've been watching too much of Summer Bay.
That's it. That's what it's like. It sort of got back into windsurfing there a little bit, but mainly surfing, you know, on good quality waves. And then I ended up taking off to Western Australia from there in 2000. And a friend of mine bought a yacht up in the Pilbara, which is sort of not much surf up there, but I just always had this, imagine living on a yacht, you know, it's so wicked, you know. So I ended up in the Pilbara learning to sail yachts with this fella, and we had surfboards with us and went out to islands out off the coast out there, and that sort of really ignited it sort of brought everything together, like being able to sail.
There's swell in the Pilbara.
It sort of wraps around the northwest shelf, so you've got to go offshore. So like when you travel by land, you think you get to Exmouth and you think there's no more. But as it goes around the corner, it's still Barrow Island and the Montebellos, and even further up, you know, even up Port Hedland and the Dampier Archipelago.
Obviously, the swell's travelling all the way to Indonesia, so it has to be going past.
And you haven't actually, when you go out sailing on a yacht, you haven't actually got to go far offshore, and there it is. It's still the long, low swell still going past. Which really kind of lit up the. I reckon there's definitely spots around here, so it sort of lit up the exploration bug, if you know what I mean. And then we sort of I kept sailing with this guy for a little while. Then I picked up my own boat, which was really, I didn't have a lot of money, so I picked up a 6.5 metre catamaran, and I basically bought it as an experiment. I did a yacht delivery from New Zealand back to Western Australia, which paid me $5,000, and I dropped that money straight on this little catamaran. It was basically an experiment to see how far up the Western Australian coast I could get it. It wasn't much bigger than a big Hobie cat.
Did it have a motor or?
No motor, yeah, no motor. And that. I mean, that comes from all the years of windsurfing. It just didn't feel right. They're sailing boats don't feel right. I don't want to have an engine on it, and the thing sailed so good anyway, which was a pleasant surprise. I ended up, I just thought I'll see how far I could get, and I ended up managing to get it all the way back up to the Pilbara, which is 1,200 miles, and a few overnight. There's a lot of experiences that went with that, which were, some of them terrifying and some of them just brilliant. It was like the polar opposites.
Yeah.
So
and this is by yourself?
Yeah, I was by myself at this stage.
Wow.
So, which is, sometimes it's almost easier. It's just, you can just sort of swell, everything's going pear-shaped. You can't turn around and point the finger. You've just got to get on with it and sort it out. So, that really, always, people say, wow, it's a small boat. And I'm like, well, it's actually a big windsurfer that I can live on and make a cup of tea and some food on. So it was that fun to sail. It was almost like windsurfing, but you could carry surfboards and stuff and get into places that bigger yachts couldn't get into. So you could chase, you could sort of explore places really practically with it, especially Western Australia being so windy. You sort of don't really need an engine there, believe it or not.
What about the tides? The tides up that way are pretty.
Yeah, the Pilbara's pretty big, but you sort of just you just sort of learn to deal with it, I guess. You sort of run aground a few times.
You must have some good seamanship for you sail on a yacht with no motor from Perth to the Pilbara.
Yeah. Well, I ended up meeting my partner Anna in Timor on another. I was doing a yacht delivery up there, and we sort of hit it off. And I said, "Oh, why don't you come down? I've got this boat. We should." I was thinking about sailing it back from the Pilbara back to Perth against the prevailing wind. I thought it's going to be a gnarly trip, but if you can. She's like, yeah, I'll have a go at that. Sounds good. Ignorance is bliss. But it ended up, it was a bit of an eye-opener really, because we were going so hard into the wind all the time. You're only really covering, on a good day, you maybe do 30 miles a day down the coast, smashing into it. But you end up seeing so much of the coast. And you end up going to these little islands that you had to go and anchor at because it's getting dark or whatever, and then just living your days by having a bit of a weather break, and you can just go as far as you can down the coast and then anchor up, and maybe you go overnight if the weather's good enough. And we made it back down to Perth with the tour. Did quite a few overnight trips on that, and both of us were like, we can go a long way in this thing. I reckon we could probably get to Indo on this boat. It was always my dream to get up to Indo, like heaps of surfers have the dream. And so that next year we went up to, sailed back up to the Pilbara, and then picked the weather, and then did a 700-mile crossing across to Sumbawa. And it was a pretty dream run. It was hatches open for most of the way, then the trade winds came in, and we did half the trip in 2 days. I think we were just flying it was magic. Flying fish, landing on the deck, it was crazy. And then rocked up in Sumbawa to just magic surf with hardly any people. It was like a dream. So we kept doing that for quite a few years.
So you did it more than once?
Yeah, so we did the Indo crossing. We went over that time, and then we went down to Java. We went along the south coast of Java to Penaitan, back to Timor, sailed back to Broome, back down to the Pilbara, back over again. And I think we had a year in Western Australia, and then we went back over again the next year.
Did you leave your boat in Indo? Or?
Yeah, sometimes we'd leave it. We left it in Indo, I think, 3 times. We'd come back to South Australia during the wet season over there, and we'd come back over here and grow veggies and go surfing on the coast
So
here for the summer.
you come over to South Australia, obviously, to Brandfield straight away, or what?
Yeah, so my partner Anna had a place in Bramfield, just inland from Elliston.
Oh, right. So
And,
that's the connection of...
That's the connection. So she had like a permaculture property sort of starting up there, and
Yep.
so this is all right. You know, it's really, it can, in some ways, it fits in really well with sailing and surfing, and in other ways it's hard work because there's days you can't. You've really got to water the garden, or you can't just take off up the coast for 3 days, like, because all the food will cark it. But where we're at now, like, I don't earn a lot of money, but it allows me to live the lifestyle I want to lead. Like, I can go out for a foil every day, if when the opportunity arises. But it's there's a lot of work in between that.
So you'd say you're sustaining your lifestyle in Brandfield now on what you can grow and naturally, or
pretty much, yeah. We pretty much, I reckon we feed us probably 80% of our food comes off the block.
That's incredible.
Like we have bees, so we have our own honey, and we can sell honey to get a bit of an income there. Our cars run on waste vegetable oil, so I don't have any fuel costs apart from lifting cans of oil from out the back of pubs. But that allows me to go up and down the coast and go and find where the waves are now. We've got limitations there with the fuel, so it's good. It's all kind of coming together pretty nice. So I've got a couple of kids who are stoked on the surf as well. So it's all really fitting in quite nicely at the moment.
And you found the Ellison community sort of adopted you pretty well, and you fitted in there easily?
Yeah. Like everywhere on the West Coast, it takes a few years to get accepted. I think, you got to take a few big waves on the head and take a bit of abuse. It's a great stretch of coast.
Yeah, it's excellent, isn't it?
So good.
So when you rocked up here, you were mainly surfing and then windsurfing as well?
I had windsurf. I didn't have any windsurfing gear on our yacht. It was just too small. But when we were back here, we'd go sailing down at Walker's. But I think I met you first time, and a lot of the crew on the coast, and just thought, this is cool. This is it's not a very big windsurfing community, but it's a pretty cool windsurfing community. It's there's so much wind, and the spots are pretty good, but there's sort of not that many people on it, and there's still sort of the pioneer spirit. There's spots that we haven't sailed yet, and how about this spot? Look at this spot. It's So
that was around late 90s.
I reckon that was 2004 first, or 2003. I think I first came over here.
Yeah.
Windsurfing like 2005 onwards.
Yeah.
So we were surfing a lot. I can remember, I'm sore, and then we'd get out for the early surf, go windsurfing in the afternoon, and by the end of the day, I was feeling some muscles there, and it felt for a while. And then digging in the garden and doing all that stuff as well.
Well, one thing's pretty unique about Elliston, where we do a lot of our sailing, is that progressively gets stronger as the day gets on. It doesn't back off, where a lot of other spots, the sea breeze will come in strong, and then filter out and slowly at sunset drop away. Where it howls at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. It's going to be 40 knots, So whatever you start out on, you're going to have to change down eventually.
Sure.
As we were getting older, bodies are getting sorer, So
It's funny though, like with the foiling though, I think I'm as fit as I've been for 20 years. I wish I find the surfing and the windsurfing is very, it's really back orientated, and it's brutal, and your knees, you come home and you feel like you've been beaten up. But now the foils come along, it's exercising all these little muscles that you wouldn't even know they're there. Like the muscles around my knees. These tiny little muscles that have got. Now I don't have knee trouble anymore. I don't have lower back trouble. So I think that's part of what's been so attractive.
So you started experimenting around with your own foil gear. You actually built your own foil to start with.
So
when was that?
That was, I think I first got into it about 5 years ago. Like another fellow who up the coast, Maxa, who we sail with a lot, windsurf with a lot. I can remember him coming past my house, and I think we're both 45, 46 or something, and he pops open the little thing and the little cover on the back of his ute, and we're cackling out there like a couple of kids. Look at this thing! Like, oh God, look at that! Oh. And he said, "Well, come down tomorrow. We'll have a go at it." And virtually nothing. There's nothing on YouTube. There's no one to teach you how to do it. So Michael just bought some gear. Oh, we'll give this a go, and it was the net. We said, "Come down. We'll get the boat out the next day. We'll have a go at it." And it was a train wreck. It was chaos, but so fun. But I can remember going, having crash after crash after crash, and then I must have got my feet in the right spot, just accidentally, and I managed to get up on foil and stay on foil, and I just remember, just don't move. So we went round the little bay, not much wind, and did a big 180, and came round the little point in Elliston, and I just remember the little bit of wind and the swell came from behind, and the rope went slack. And that was like the moment. I'm on a swell. This thing is carrying me on a swell, and there's no.
That was a spark.
Energy, and that was somehow I've got to get one of these things. It's just, this is magic. So that was like the.
That was the injury.
My first one was wooden.
So then you went and said, I'm going to build my own.
I'm going to build one, yeah, because I didn't, living the lifestyle we had, there's no way I was going to be able to drop, $3 or $4 grand on some gear, because there wasn't hardly any second-hand gear around.
Yeah.
The boards were expensive, because there wasn't that big a volume of them.
Yeah.
And I read about this mob in America who were making kits, and the kit rocked up, and it's this things, a few bits of wood, and they weren't really shaped, and it sort of opened up the rabbit hole of learning about foil profiles and how to make them strong enough. So I made a wooden one, and that lasted about 6 months until I had it on I was trying to learn how to sup on it, on this huge, heavy sup, and I got caught inside by a set, and I just hear this crack. I turned around, and because it floats, it was sitting there without the mast on it. That was the end of that one.
So it broke the foil off?
Just broke the mast off. Yeah. So it was strong enough. Well, I was on a windsurfer most of the time on a 9-foot sup. I put some boxes in a 9-foot sup, and looking back on it now, it's almost ridiculous, But it just had that. I just had that spark. I was like a grommet again.
Yeah.
I'm up at 6 a.m. trying to get a little bit of the tail end of a front that's gone through. It's southwest. I remember I'd come home and the kids would go, "How far did you go today?" I said, I went along for 5 seconds today, then come back down. And the next day, I said, I did 12 seconds today. And then after a few weeks, it was, I got all the way across the bay, and that little increment, it was like learning to windsurf again.
How quick was that progression? Was it weeks or days or?
Well, if you look at it if you looked at it day to day, it felt like you weren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
But when you looked at it, it's still the same now. If you look back over 2 or 3 weeks, you're like, oh no, I've gone somewhere. But every time you go out, you think this thing is so difficult. But I've just loved it the whole way. The whole progression. Yeah.
So then you upgraded and bought yourself a new foil.
Yeah. Well, I ended up learning how to vacuum bag, so I made myself a carbon fibre foil.
Yeah.
And that was, I loved the process of doing it and trying to work out how to use the carbon and all that stuff, but it's so time consuming. And it's one of those things. I love backyard surfboard makers and doing stuff backyard, but I think hydrofoil is one of those things that you just need the R&D, and then the big machinery that you can pump out carbon fibre masts. It'd take me 3 weeks to make a mast.
Yeah.
And the materials involved, and then when they turn out, they're good, but they're not as good as something you can just buy off the peg. So.
Well, as you find out later on, one little imperfection in the mould or the thing is
you change it.
Everything.
Yeah.
Well,
huge
especially
change.
when you put shims in are only for a
Yeah.
fraction of a millimetre.
You wouldn't think it would make any difference, but it changed it. And I think that's what I love about it. It's twiddling with bolts and fiddling with stuff. What?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty fun. But yeah, then I ended up getting a couple of axis foils, which really just it allowed me to not spend so much time in the shed and more time out actually learning how to do it properly.
Yep.
And then I ditched the windsurfer. The windsurfer was great, but trying to turn them, trying to jibe them, it's just. Even after 18 months, I don't reckon I really had it.
Yep.
I didn't have it nailed. You know, it was so hard. And then my brother in Ireland sent me over one of the hand wings, a wing ding, and I never looked back after that. So it's just magic. So good.
So, what was the first axis foil you got to get started? Do you remember? Or?
I think I bought an 1150 pump and glide and a ART 999. I think they were the two that I had. I only just sold the 1150, so I had that for 3 years, and I'd still have it now, but I just needed to trade up and get some new gear. It was, it was so far ahead of its time. Still current now. And I was winging on the 999 most of the time, and that was just a game changer. It's just couldn't believe how much glide and how fast. You know, where we wing in Elliston, the swells come in and they're usually long period. I mean, the shortest period swells we get are probably 12 seconds, aren't they?
Yeah,
12
right.
seconds.
Yeah.
And often they're 18, 19 seconds. So the swells they're moving so fast that.
They're quick and got a punch to them, haven't they?
And they got punched to them, yeah. So the foils that I was on, they just couldn't keep up. They were just they're at their top end all the time, and they get flighty and skatey. So when the high aspect axis one came along, all of a sudden I could get on a wave out the back and drop the wing, and I could ride the whole day. And they've gone another level again now. Like it's just, yeah. I always remember when I was 8 years old, I went to one of those 180 degree cinema things in a dome.
Oh yeah.
You know, like in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I remember there was some dudes surfing at Waikiki, you know, on the big old wooden boards. And in my 8-year-old mind, I was like, wow, look at that. That must be like flying, you know. And I think that must have started the obsession a little bit. But when I got on a windsurfer, it was good. It was good. Surfing, I love to surf, but it never really lived up to that 8-year-old impression of what that must feel like.
Yeah.
But then that day when I was with Max in the bay, I think that was what it was. It's like, this is what I imagined it felt like when I was 8 years old in that movie theatre. This is what it felt like, and now it feels better than I imagined it felt like when I was 8 years old. I think that's why it's so. Every time I go out, like 5 years on, this thing. I can't believe this thing works.
Yeah.
So crazy. Like hats off to the crew who believed you could do it.
Well, the technology is in the last 5 or 6 years. It's just been unprecedented in any water sports. You know.
Yeah.
Just for the technical side of the foils.
Yeah, the construction, the design, that just everything. Yeah, and then the people thinking outside the box as well, like putting foils in different water environments or putting foils on different gear, and getting those benefits through different sports. You know, it's so. You
can see now the crossovers coming into other sports as well too. You know,
and I love it because it's, you know, if you go out and you sup foil for a few days, you go back winging, and you've got so much better on the wing. Then you might wing for a week and get back on your sup foil, and you've got so much better on the sup, and it all just feeds back.
Yeah.
And your standard goes up exponentially. Yeah. So fun.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, that's sort of given us a bit of a background on where you're at the moment. So so people just understand who you actually are and where you come from now. So, I think we'll end it at that.
Yep. Thank you. Very good.